right, guys, welcome back. We promised you a podcast, and we're going to call this podcast number 1. We've got a lot of people scheduled for the podcast, but of course, in today's day and time, everybody stays very busy. But we're very thankful today on this beautiful rainy day that we were able to get Ms. Davis to free up her schedule enough to talk about our new computer. It just got here. Christian and AJ are very excited. They kept on harping about needing a new computer to do editing because our videos are not good enough, so they need to edit them. So we got this for them. But in doing that, it reminded us that Ms. Davis, a.k.a. Mom, a.k.a. Boss, a.k.a. a lot of other things, Grandma, Mother, everything else, came from a crazy computer background. So if any of you people out there watching are interested in computers way before even this was new technology, she's going to tell us a little bit about it. But she's also, for Davis Auto Sales, the backbone of the computer, the website, us doing window stickers back in the 80s. Some people are just starting to do window stickers today. We were doing them back in the 80s. Some crazy stuff that obviously time can't recap, but we've been at this a long time. And with computers, she goes back to the infancy of them because she had a corporate career. So anyway, start there. Philip Morris, computers.
Philip Morris, 37-year career, started with mainframes, computers. Personal computers were not even heard of at that point in time. And our first computer that we had, you can't call it a personal computer. Coleco came out with what was called an Atom computer. My sister worked at a department store, and believe it or not, Tallheimers, believe it or not, an Atom computer came in. She was able to buy it for me with her discount, and we had our very first Coleco Atom computer. You couldn't do much on it but word processing, but it was, yippee, I can do something on a computer at home. So we may have started doing the window stickers back then.
We should have plugged this in. Because the screen's probably green. And that's it. There weren't any other technology, but we'll try that for another day.
Then, because I worked in the computer department at Philip Morris, I was able to get one of the first personal computers. And that was very exciting. It had one floppy drive. Many of you may not even know what that is, but it had one floppy drive. What that means is your program that you were using was on a floppy drive, and then when you wanted to save your data, you had a separate floppy drive. So you were constantly, whenever you were working, it would tell you put in the program, and you'd have to take that out and put in your data for it to save the data. So you were constantly going back and forth putting the two floppy drives in and out. Then I upgraded to a personal computer that had two floppy drives. This was like heaven. You could put your program in one and your data file in the other.
Well, before we get too far with that, let's circle back. So this computer is small. Not small today, but in her era, this was small. The computers that Philip Morris had that she worked with from the 70s forward were the size of a office building. And then that was the mainframe. And then her screen, which was a big old tube, probably like a TV, was hooked to that. And then you had a keyboard, right?
Had a keyboard.
So computers have shrunk down. To get to this size was a big shrink. Christian couldn't even lift this to take it over here, so I had to pick it up. It was so heavy for him. He didn't want to hurt his back. So, and that's one of the reasons for this video, because Christian came up to this area, and as he walked up here, he saw this sitting in the corner and said, "What is that?" He really, truly did not know what this was. Had no clue this was actually a computer. They do look a little different these days. So.
They do.
And I had to get back to the size because computers were mammoth. They've shrunk them down, and now they're color and everything else. So keep going.
I've not much more to go other than floppy drives went away and everything was stored on the hard drive.
We didn't even have a computer in the office until the late 90s.
probably, and that comes along with working in the corporate career. I knew about websites, and I told y'all, I wasn't working here full time then. I said, you need a website, and you and Dad go, what do we need a website for?
Yeah, and it was, well, that's a whole subject for another day. But she said, we didn't have a computer in the office. One of my, Brian, had gotten on the computer at home and gotten on something called eBay and bought a RC car before anybody even knew what eBay was, and we all thought he was just going to lose his money because this was the craziest thing. He had to go to the World Wide Web, www.ebay.com. You might even have to spell it out back then, World Wide Web. But he got on there, and that was the first time we had experienced. It was hooked to a modem, and we had to have the right. You had to have the phone working right to hook to the internet. So she had to turn on something special so that he could make that order. That was our first experience with ordering online, and we didn't move a computer to the office until well after that. But she did come to us and said, look, we need a website. And the whole World Wide Web is coming and blah, blah, blah. And, we're thinking spider webs or whatever. None of it made any sense to us at all. Not to mention it was like $100. It was like, we're not spending $100 on some crap that you think's going to do something. I mean, that's like some infomercial, Ponzi scheme crap. Like, this is not happening. But she talked us into it, and I guess around 93, 4, 5, somewhere in there. We're right at 30 years with our website. Maybe more. We can't really figure that out. But she said we got to have it, and it was just a home screen. It really was not much more. And then she entered some data, and we had inventory. And we actually sold one of our first minivans to somebody in Ohio, I think it was. And they saw us on the web. And then past that, Auto Trader came out with something that most dealers never even understood, but they had a web package. And it was whatever it was, 20, 30, 40 bucks. We were their trial guinea pig. They loaded our inventory that we put in the magazine on there. And we also saw a sale from that. We just recently canceled our Auto Trader after 30 years of dealing with that company, and it was like $3,000 a month when we finally canceled. And that was the small package. You could spend $10,000 a month. Some dealers did. But what started as 20 or 30 bucks back then, obviously inflation took over with. But she was inspirational in getting the website done and then maintaining the website. We had to manually enter everything and do all that. But with your corporate career, you programmed. You wrote programs.
I did. And as I progressed in the computer department, now mind you, I had 3 young sons at home. My boss told me I worked in research and development, and I worked around most people that had PhDs. So my boss told me that I had to go to college and get a degree. Of course, that would have been a computer degree. But I told him, I said, I've got 3 young children at home. I'm working full time. How am I ever going to go to college and get a degree? And I said, I'll be X years old by the time I ever get a degree. And he said, well, how old will you be if you don't go to college? So he said, we will make time for you to go to college. And that's what they did. And I ended up clipping through 2.5 years worth of college just based on work experience. I could pass the test and not have to take the course. And then I had a 1.5 years of actual classes I had to go to. So that was me a very worthwhile thing.
And then we went to her graduation as she was going to our graduations. Not from college, though. But she graduated college. None of us did.
And that I remember in '92. That's a date I can remember.
Yeah, so she still graduated before we did, technically.
But computers have come a long way.
Yeah, you can do most everything now right here that you couldn't even do right here. And also the first computer for people that are from our era, all my friends had Atari. That was about the same time Atari came out. So Atari, if you look at the Atari games and all the stuff, you can Google this, guys, but it always said trademark, and it was in the 80s. So it was early 80s when you had that computer at home, but we had Coleco. So we basically had the generic Atari. Nobody could trade games or swap games with us because our games were weird, and Atari was cool. So it was kind of like having fake Jordans. You just had to deal with what you had to deal with. We had the generic computer version of a video game, and you could play Oregon Trail, and you could play a couple other games with little stick figures and little other things, where everybody else had cool graphics and had Atari like pole position and stuff. So we were a little behind the times. That was before Nintendo and Sega and PlayStation and all that, but that was in the 80s. We're trying to figure it out. It was definitely in the early 80s that took place. So that takes you back. But somebody out there had Coleco. They know what we're talking about because Coleco also had a game station. It was just way different. It was more odd. It was like a 8-track, right? The games?
Yes, they
Yeah.
were about the size of an 8-track.
Yeah, so
And I will say, I've been gone from the computer career for over 20 years. They still look to me every time something computer-wise breaks, and they don't understand that technology has moved forward, and I've been out of that field for a very long time.
she still puts most of the computer people to shame because she answers the question that they fumble over. And that's kind of embarrassing to some of you guys out there that she's able to do that. But she also can whip out a computer program. Just recently she did one for me, a spreadsheet for like rental properties. And she, you just need to do it this way. And then she's got it all designed, and I just push a button and I put in an input. Something that you pay to buy, she actually designed. She's done all of our computer generated things that Christian does all the time and puts in inputs and makes labels for our window stickers and makes labels for our folders and all of that good stuff. So
Easy today.
easy today.
Easy today.
Yeah. And better than using a typewriter, which is what my father actually used for a lot of stuff. And you had to take typing in school. You learned on a typewriter. So, that's another thing. What about your typewriter skills?
When I was in high school, each high school in the area sent one person for a typing contest. One person from every high school in the area. And it was at Tallhammers. And we're all in a room practicing before the actual test. And my sister's walking up and down the aisles, looking at everybody, and she came back to me. She said, "You're the fastest so far." So I did win the typing contest, over 100 words a minute. I won $100 for my school, which was a lot of money back then, and I got an electric typewriter for myself.
So I did a lot of research to learn all this information about Ms. Davis today. So I do a lot of background and fact checking, but everything she says is correct. So we have a world champion typewriter specialist here that beat the competition. So as you all know, we like to be on top of everything. So if you want to have a contest, we'll put her typing skills up against anybody. What else you got?
I can't think of anything else.
Hopefully that's been entertaining for you guys. Couldn't think of a better person for podcast number 1. And we really appreciate your time, Ms. Davis, that you had. We know it's valuable, so we appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Yeah,
I'm son number 1.
Yeah, and hopefully it's educational to somebody. But if you guys like this informative video, we can do more because we can usually interrupt her busy schedule to come across here to help us out with this. And hey, here's official podcast number 1 in studio number 1 with one light working, no heater AC, but it's not leaking. So we got dry area to do this. So thank you guys so much. Christian learned a lot. He's going to be a wealth of knowledge now. All this information that he really needed to know. So thanks for tuning in. Podcast number 1, Ms. Davis. Thank you.